You know, I'm a big Roth fan. I love tax-free, and everybody I know that listened to me and did Roth conversions for the past over 20 years loves having Roth IRAs. Why do they love it so much? Because everybody likes to see an account grow that's growing absolutely income tax free. No R&Ds, no complicated calculations. You'd never have to touch it. It just grows income tax free. Even under the Secure Act, you can pass it to beneficiaries. They can go another 10 years. So it grows tax free for you for the rest of your life and 10 years beyond to your beneficiaries.
Hey everyone, I'm Jean Chatzky. Thanks so much for joining me today on HerMoney. So one thing we have learned about all of you, and by all of you, I mean our listeners, and it's that you really cannot get enough content on retirement. Whenever we roll out an episode on retirement, and I think the most clear example of this was the episode that we ran with Christine Benz, the author of the new book, which is Selling Like Hotcakes, How to Retire. It just went through the roof, and we brought her back for a mailbag. And we are once again turning to the topic of retirement because it is one of those periods in life where we start thinking about heavying up on our retirement contributions as we close in at the end of the year, and year-end money moves and things that have to do with IRAs. Ed Slott, as many of you know, is my go-to on this, on everything IRA. He is a CPA. He's a best-selling author. He is a nationally recognized IRA expert. And again, our episodes with Ed are consistently some of our most listened to episodes. And one of the reasons, besides the fact that Ed is a bit of a genius, is that IRAs are really complicated. They take many shapes and many forms. The tax treatment of them seems to change on the regular. We need help. So this week, Ed was kind enough to come on back and tackle some questions from all of you about your IRAs. Ed, welcome.
Well, thank you for that great intro, but you're right. It is horribly confusing. It's almost not even fair that it's so hard to get your own money out of your retirement savings without stepping on one of these tax landmines.
Yeah, I think about it as I think about my own retirement and whether I've got the right balance of money in IRAs versus Roth IRAs, 401ks, Roth 401ks these days. It's a whole maze of things. Before we get to our questions, though, from our audience, I have one for you of my own. We just had an election in this
What?
country.
Nobody
I don't
told
know if
me.
you heard. I know we did. We just had an election. Donald Trump is headed back to the White House. What does this mean for our retirement investments?
Well, I think you're going to have an extension. My own, I don't have any inside knowledge, but I think there'll be an extension of the tax cuts. That's probably the first thing that seems almost obvious. Remember, some of these tax rates are supposed to go up after 2025. I think they'll be extended in some fashion, but probably not over the top. I was just reading a piece in the Wall Street Journal recently where even their editorials say, you know, that's good, but too much may be not good if we blow out the deficit debt levels.
Right. So if they have to be careful that not only are they extending the tax cuts, but they're doing it in a way that we can actually pay for these things.
I mean, again, it comes down to basic math. The more you give, the more you take. It's all the same pile of money.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, President-elect Trump is saying growth will pay for these things. Do you think that argument holds water?
I don't know if that happened with the first round of cuts. Of course, the stock market helped a lot of the growth. I don't know if they figured on that. The growth has been exponential in the market. I saw Fidelity came out with a report recently, more 401k millionaires than ever before.
That's been happening year in and year out over the past decade, it seems. As we turn to IRAs, the IRS just announced the contribution limits for 401ks and for IRAs for 2025. Can we just start by going over what everyone needs to know here?
Well, these are the regular cost of living increases, which are not as much as in the past year. They're based on inflation factors, which is relatively low, just like the Social Security checks didn't go up as much as it did in other years. So you see modest increases in some of these, but for right now, what you need to know is you still have literally till April 15th next year to put in your IRA contribution or Roth IRA contribution for this year. Most 401k contributions, though, will have to be made for 24 by the end of 24.
And by the way, if you want to heavy up on a 401k contribution, don't sit on that until the end of December. Your plan may not be set up to accept it at that point. If you want to do something, do it now while we still got a little time to run in November. Get in touch with your plan administrator or your benefits department and just get that in motion.
That is an important piece of advice, what you just said there. Not only the plans, the custodians, IRA moves, RMDs. Don't wait until that last week in December. It's mass confusion at the big custodians. In fact, anybody at these big places that knows what they're doing knows to take that week off.
Yes. Yeah. So in the second quarter of 2024, speaking of Fidelity released some data that Roth conversions were up 46% year over year. What's going on that's sending them through the roof?
Well, people like tax-free. You know, I'm a big Roth fan. I love tax-free. And everybody I know that listened to me and did Roth conversions for the past over 20 years loves having Roth IRAs. Why do they love it so much? Because everybody likes to see an account grow that's growing absolutely income tax-free. No RMDs, no complicated calculations. You'd never have to touch it. It just grows income tax-free. If you need it in retirement, you generally take it out income tax-free. Even under the Secure Act, you can pass it to beneficiaries. They can go another 10 years. So it grows tax-free for you for the rest of your life and 10 years beyond to your beneficiaries. And your beneficiaries may be in their own highest earnings years, so it's a big benefit to them to get tax-free income.
This has been another up year in the market. Does that make it a good year to do Roth conversions?
It's always a good year to do Roth conversions because tax rates are low for most people. We have historically low tax rates. People that say, well, I want to do conversions, I'm going to wait till the market goes up or goes down. Actually, people say if the market takes a big drop, oh, that's when I'll convert. It's the same thing with stocks. You can't time the market for Roth conversions. If you really want to do that, probably the best way to do that is to sort of dollar cost averaging into the Roth. Do a series of smaller Roth conversions every month or every year. But I would caution against that because the rules changed several years ago. Years ago, you could undo a Roth conversion. Do you remember that? People were going back and forth. Can't do that anymore. That's been the case since the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act eliminated what we called Roth recharacterizations, do-overs. There's no redos on that anymore. So I would always say, have the conversation, do the analysis, see if you want to convert, but don't pull the trigger on that probably till the first week of December. Why? Because you want to know what it's going to cost in taxes. And the later you go in the year, but not too late, that's why I said first week in December, you'll have a better projection of what your income might be. The reason I say first week in December, that's around right after many of the big mutual fund companies will release their capital gain distributions, which is going to throw you way off. You might think, oh, I kind of know what my income is. Now you see all these capital gain distributions from this wild ride we had this year, and you might say, wow, I didn't realize I'd be in that high of a bracket. Or you might have got a bonus. Who knows? The idea is you want to have a better estimate of what your income will be so you will know have a better projection of what a Roth conversion will cost. And that won't happen till about the first week of December. So you can prepare for it, but don't pull the trigger until have a better idea what the numbers are, because you can't undo it.
All right, fantastic. Let's move on to some questions from our community. You ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay, let's take a question. This one comes from Mary Lee in our private HerMoney Facebook group. And we had a few people actually who had questions along these lines. She says, my partner and I are both retired. We'll be waiting a few years before we start taking money from retirement accounts. By then, we'll both be collecting Social Security. My husband has 2 pensions as well. We have 1 after-tax 401k and 2 Roth accounts, a simple and a SEP IRA. Where do we start to withdraw first? So what I've heard, Ed, is that you should take money from the taxable accounts first as a general rule.
Yes, in her case, because she said a few things. She's probably in her 60s, didn't start Social Security yet. And one thing I would recommend in most cases to hold off on Social Security till you can lock in the largest check for life at age 70. So we're not going to take from there. He has a few pensions. So take from the SEP and Simple. These are IRAs, taxable. Chances are you're in a much lower bracket and can get that money out at a very low rate. And remember, it will have to be taxed at some point anyway. If you do it now, it doesn't affect Social Security taxation because you're not taking that. You'll get a bigger Social Security check later and probably have lower RMDs, required minimum distributions, later because you're drawing some of that taxable money out now.
Okay, fantastic. We've got one from Julie. She writes, we used my daughter's 529 account to pay her college tuition directly and then also transferred money to our bank account to pay for her books. She has since withdrawn from the program. I'm hoping her tuition refund will be sent back to the 529. We'll be trying to sell all of her books, and I'm wondering if I need to deposit that money back in the 529 so we don't owe taxes on it, or can I just put it in her Roth IRA?
No, that's a different, they're mixing up a couple of provisions. I don't know. I never heard that you could put refunds back in a 529. So that could be a new one on me. I never even thought of that. I didn't even think you could make that much money selling the used books, but I understand books are pretty expensive now. But there is a provision where you can roll 529 money over to Roth. That's relatively new if it's not needed. There are a couple of conditions. The 529 has to be for the student, the person with the Roth IRA has to have been open 15 years, and the contributions for the last 5 years don't count. But the big limitation is $35,000 lifetime, and it's limited to the amount you could have put in a Roth IRA, which is $7,000 for 2024. So that's the most you might be able to contribute. So that may be what she was referring to, because there's been a lot of news about these new 529 to Roth rollovers allowed, and even financial advisors are confused. When that first came out, they thought, oh, we could transfer hundreds of thousands of the 529 to the Roth. No, it's generally going to be about $7,000 a year, say over 5 years is your $35,000. And that's about it. And that's if you meet all of those conditions. Plus, to do that, she would actually have to have compensation, be able to contribute to a Roth, otherwise contribute, even if she doesn't, to a Roth IRA by having wages or self-employment income. There are a lot of conditions, but I don't know about the refund thing.
Julie, I would actually pick up the phone and I would call the 529 administrator. The rule with 529 withdrawals is that they have to be used for qualified educational expenses. You used them for qualified educational expenses. So I am not sure how they're going to tell you to handle the refund of this tuition. Since she was enrolled in school, my guess is that this would not catch up with you, but I do believe that it is wise to be as straightforward as you possibly can. So give the 529 plan a call. They, I'm sure, deal with this all the time, and ask them what the easiest thing is to do from their perspective and for yours. We're going to take a very quick break and we'll come back with Ed Slott. We are back with Ed Slott, expert on all things IRA. Our next question, Ed, comes from Jamie. She says, my full-time employer does not offer any type of retirement fund. Last year, I maxed out my Roth, but I'm wondering, since I'm also a sole proprietor of my own business, can I open a SEP IRA? And while I'm asking, is there such a thing as a SEP Roth? In other words, can I max out my Roth and also open a SEP IRA, or must I do one or the other?
You can max out your Roth and open a SEP IRA, or if you can get it, a SEP Roth IRA. They're kind of new. They've actually been around a year or two, but from what I'm hearing, not many custodians are geared up for these things. But yes, there is a SEP Roth IRA, which is a great way to go, and you could also do your own Roth IRA contribution.
Are there any limits on doing both? I mean, I know that there are limits on how much you can put into a Roth and there how much you can put into a SEP, but no limits.
There are limits for the SEP. I mean, I'm looking at the limits, but chances are it's not going to be, for 2024, it's 25% of your income up to $345,000. So essentially, pretty high limit, you might say, for that. The Roth IRA is a $7,000 limit, or if you're 50 or over, another $1,000, $8,000. But the Roth IRA has income limits. If you're very high income, you can't contribute to a Roth IRA.
And the distinction here is that for Jamie, the income from her full-time job is what funds the Roth contribution. The income from her own business is what funds the SEP. Nikki wonders, is there, and it's kind of a related question, is there an easy way to know whether I still qualify to put money in my Roth IRA? I recently got married and we now file taxes together.
Okay, if you file jointly, then the income limits are higher. For example, I'm looking at them now for 2024. A married couple, to get the full Roth contribution, can go up to $230,000 of income. So it's a pretty high level. It phases out $230,000 to $240,000. After $240,000, you can't do Roth contributions. But even if you were over that, there's something called a backdoor Roth, where you could make a non-deductible contribution to your traditional IRA and then convert it to a Roth and come back to the same place.
Fantastic. Finally, we've got an investment question from Zan. She writes, after listening to your podcast and reading HerMoney articles, I learned how to open a Roth IRA and decided I wanted to focus on low-cost index funds. I researched, decided my criteria, and I feel really good about my choices. Some background. I'm 51, contribute fully to my 401k, which is 90% in a target date fund and 10% in company stock. But I didn't start saving for retirement until I was 42. I have an emergency fund with 2 months of expenses, and with maxing out my 401k and Roth, I'll spend the rest of the year or so funding my job loss fund, which is 6 to 12 months of expenses. So my question is, as I'm adding to this Roth IRA every year, I feel like I want to stay on the low-cost index fund route. But should I stick with 3 to 5 index funds, or should that number be much higher? I think she's asking from a perspective of diversification, since much of her money is in that target date fund.
Well, I'm not an investment guy, but just from consolidation purposes, if each of the funds do essentially the same thing, then why do you need 5 of them, unless they're in 5 different categories?
Yeah, I would say from the perspective of diversification, you want a total stock market index fund, a total bond market index fund, maybe some additional international exposure, but that really should do the trick for you. I wouldn't go crazy trying to cover and then recover your bases, because what you'll learn very quickly is that you're doubling up. And if you want to be consistent with what's going on in your target date fund, look at the mix in your target date fund. It'll give you a breakdown of what you've got in stocks, what you've got in bonds, what you've got in international. It'll break down by types of stocks and bonds, and you can mirror that essentially so that you've got the same thing going on inside your workplace plan and outside your workplace plan. Good luck with that, and congratulations on doing all the great work. Ed, thank you so much for this. Thank you for the answers.
Thank you. It sounded like that last Zab was a loyal listener of yours. All the things you talk about, it's like she was checking them off and hit the emergency fund, this one. She's got everything going on.
Thank you for being with us. Have a happy Thanksgiving.
Yep, same to you. Thanks, Gene.